Okay, we're continuing with quotes of Arthur Schopenhauer. This is part 4. First quote is, don't tell your friend what your enemy shouldn't know. The next one, the closing years of life are like the end of a masquerade party when the masks are off, the masks are dropped. So that's one thing I like about old people is old people are much more willing to say the truth about stuff. My mother was a great example of that. She was very funny. She was constantly saying inappropriate truth all over the place. Like you would go to the restaurant and the waiter had not properly matched the colors of their clothing. And it could be a young, good-looking man or woman, whatever it is. And she would say, don't you think this color goes better with this? Whatever it was. I mean, she was nice about it. She was funny, though, because whatever she said was true. She would say all kinds of things that were very rude and funny and true, in a nice way. Okay, apart from man, no being wonders at his existence. History is for time, what geography is for space. Any book which is at all important should be reread immediately. Yeah, so basically we've talked about that before. You take the book and you transfer the useful lines or notes or concepts into a knowledge management system so you keep that information. That's the purpose of reading something, to keep that information and to generate ideas. He who does not enjoy solitude will not enjoy freedom. Yeah, I mean, it's a sign of an intelligent person. They like to be alone and they like to read. Okay. The cause of laughter is the sudden perception of the difference between an ideal concept and the real thing in actual life. Yeah, like you're walking down a path in a forest, you see something, you think, oh my God, is that a snake? Oh no, it's just a stick. Okay, and it's also the idea that a word will have, this is, like one of the theories of humor, a word will have two meanings and you go with the common expected meaning, then all of a sudden you realize it's the other meaning, and it's like a train that rapidly switched tracks, and that's funny because it's a surprise. Okay, if you feel irritated by the absurd remarks of two people whose conversation you happen to overhear, you should imagine you are listening to a dialogue of two fools in a comedy. Okay. Schopenhauer on emotions. He said, pride is generally censored and decried, but mainly by those who have nothing to be proud of. Pride is an established sense of one's worth. Pride works from within. It is the direct appreciation of oneself. Vanity is the desire to arrive at this appreciation indirectly from without. A man without hope is a man without fear. With people of only moderate ability, modesty is mere honesty, but for those who possess great talent, it is hypocrisy. Yeah, and that's another thing too. I would say, people sometimes say to me, why am I so arrogant? Why am I so over-the-top confident? And my attitude is, look, I deal with a lot of stuff, and you have to be confident. Otherwise, how could you stand up to all the things you have to stand up to, okay? I rewrote the internal medicine textbook, so I have to be able to say and know I'm right when I say internal medicine textbooks are stupid. They're completely wrong. They're ignorant. They're a disgrace. They're an embarrassment. And I found it easy to correct them. And that's a true statement. And it's obvious if you know why. Okay? All right. But you have to have that confidence, because a wimp's not going to fix anything. So you have to be strong and know you're right. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to achieve much. I hung around with a lot of guys, national champion, world champion, Olympic champion. They're real confident. They're real arrogant. They know they're great, okay? And you should know what you can do. Okay, all philosophy advances are made outside the universities. Okay, now these are some of the reasons why I love Schopenhauer, because he gives you confidence to achieve, because he points out the fact all of the university professors, they're all phony scumbags, okay? Now, don't get me wrong. You might have a university professor here or there that's actually quite good, but in general, the word university professor in the modern world means a fake. It means somebody who is incompetent, okay? Almost everything in a modern university is fake, okay? Pre-med education is entirely fake. Calculus has 0% carryover to clinical medicine. Physics, 0% carryover to clinical medicine. It's a joke. I always laugh. I can teach anybody more about clinical medicine in 5 minutes than they learn in 11 years of conventional medical education. Look, we can do it in 5 seconds. What causes hypertension? High-fat diet with high sodium. What causes diabetes? High-fat diet. Okay. What is atherosclerosis? A blood clot. Okay, that's more information than it'll take them 10 years and they won't learn that. But they'll memorize the 20th manifestation of a rare disease. Stupid. Okay, Schopenhauer continues. It is only in old age that intellectual men attain their sublime expression. And there's truth in that too. I never heard a doctor less than 40 years of age ever give a decent lecture. And the older they get, the better they get. Because they have more knowledge. Also, they know their career is coming to an end and they don't really give a rat's ass anymore. They're just going to tell you the truth. The old guys, they'll admit, this is how I screwed up. Okay, this is how I messed up positioning of the device. This is how I missed an infection. I missed a bleed. This is why I screwed up. They'll tell you stuff, and that's valuable. That's how you really learn, is when a lecturer is honest. Okay, Schopenhauer, poetry bears more the character of youth, philosophy that of old age. Okay, but this is a big one, because a lot of young guys, they could be the smartest guy in the world for their field, but it doesn't matter. They just don't have experience, so they don't really know anything. I would, like, if I needed an opinion on anything, I would never speak to a doctor less than 50 years of age. He might be able to tell me what's in the book, but he's not going to have the clinical experience. Like, when I need doctor opinions, I always go to the best guys because I know how to find them pretty fast because I got a lot of friends that are up there. And it's always going to be some guy who's at least 50, quite often 55, 60, who really knows a lot, knows what's true, knows what's BS, knows what's real, has got a lot of clinical experience. Okay, says, art is an escape from reality. Art just sort of makes you happy. It's a higher level of life to sit around and enjoy that stuff. He says, Cleo, the muse of history, is as thoroughly infected with the lies as a street whore with syphilis. Yeah. Well, what I've seen about history is, there's always some type of goal with history writing. And initially, people want to tell the truth about something. And in a way, they like it. They're going to be positive towards it. But later on, a new conqueror comes in and he'll rewrite the history of a country to diminish it, to make the people not, like their founding fathers. That's what's happened to the United States. The United States has sort of drifted into tyranny, and it has mocks the founding fathers, says, oh, they're evil racists, rather than the reality is they're the greatest founding fathers of any country that ever existed. Every powerful country that ever existed has been somewhat imperial, colonial, and all that kind of stuff. But never did you have anybody writing a constitution like the USA did. Okay, he says, the role of philosophy is to lay bare the true nature of the world. 2 foreigners visiting Europe went to the theater for the first time. One of them occupied himself with trying to understand the theatrical machinery, which he succeeded in doing. The other, despite his ignorance of the language, thought to unravel the meaning of the play. The former is like the astronomer, the latter the philosopher. The lower a man is in an intellectual respect, the less puzzling and mysterious is the universe and existence to him. On the contrary, everything how it is and that it is seems to him a mere matter of course. Okay. Schopenhauer continues. He says, aristocracies are of 3 types: birth and rank, wealth, and of intellect. The last is really the most distinguished of the 3. And I think that's a common way like a smart person wants to think. Because you say to yourself, well, I wasn't lucky enough to be born, into a really rich family, a really prestigious family. So at least I can try to become smart. That's something doable. It's kind of like what Beethoven said to one of the princes. What you are by an accident of birth. But what I am, I have created myself. There are thousands of princes, but there is only one Beethoven. Okay. I like Beethoven. He had a rough life. He was poor, and his life was rough. He was sick. He was going blind. He went deaf. Okay, Arthur Schopenhauer. The first 30 years of life gives us the text. The next 30, the commentary. Yeah, so, a lot of times what you do with your old age, you spend yourself daydreaming about the past. So if I could live this part over, I would have done this. And that's pleasant, but, I like to think there's still something to do as you get older. As you get older, if you're smart, you like teaching, you like talking, you like writing. And they should have the smart old guys teaching and talking and writing. They've got more to teach and talk and write about. But what I found is, man, you're ostracized. Look at our churches. You got all these stupid, low IQ priests, homo pedophiles who are ripping off the churches, alcoholic priests, and they won't allow noble masculinity to speak in the church. And then they got 503 exemptions that don't allow them to say anything controversial, or they lose their tax exemption status. So that makes church stink. Why don't they get the smart men of the community to come in and talk? Then the audience would have something valuable for their time. And the fact that they're unwilling to do that and they're totally corrupt and they're corrupt at the top means the church can't fix itself, which is kind of sad. Anyways, that's it for Schopenhauer today.